recording.
Okay, I see it and it's recording.
Okay. I'm going to hit share my desktop one more time for good measure. All right. So can you see it in here? Okay. All right. Thanks. All right. So this is the test review. I think everybody got that. Everybody. It seemed like almost everybody got this first question right. So, but if I were to kind of want to see the difference between those two statements, whether this was in interactive Python or not, what I might want to do is inspect the value of x, like find out what x is. And in interactive Python, you can simply put the next line. If you say, okay, here I could say find out what x is. Okay, so I could run that, and I can see that x is a 6, and then I could run it the other way, and x, and find out that x is still equal to 6. So,
so are you saying that x is true? I mean, 6 is true. The two signs mean.
Right. So I guess what I'm trying to point out here is that so far, I'm going to get into that. What I'm trying to point out here is that that needs to be bigger, doesn't it? Here, I can just make that a little bit bigger.
So you can run it and find the answer.
Well, right here, so far, x doesn't equal anything different, right? Like, x is 6 both times. So I can't necessarily find out from this. In fact, why does x equal 6 here for?
X is signing the value for 6. That value is assigned to 6. You make a mistake. You say that is 6.
Which one?
With the double equal. Are you saying that?
The equal is the.
That's just saying that basically if or when x is equal to 6, I need that x is
right.
Always 6. Well, not always, subject to change, but.
Well, why is the second one stating that x is out?
Yeah. No, the second one does not output 6. So this what happens. 6 gets assigned x.
Okay.
So x now carries the value of 6.
Right.
And then in this cell, I ask x is equal to 6, and then I write x.
True.
Yeah. So.
Okay, so it's a true statement. It's true or false.
Yeah. So if I don't put if I don't ask it to print x, it prints the last line of code. That's what interactive Python always gives you, the result of the last line of code.
Yeah. So if you put 5 and printed at 6, what would it came out to be? We could that double at 5. Would you say false?
Yes, it would.
Yeah. Okay.
Now the question on the test asks what the difference between those two lines were, and so you'd be looking at x equals 6 versus x equals 6, and the correct answer was that this is a conditional statement. It's asking. It's a logical operator. It's asking, is x equal to 6, where this one is assigning the value 6 to the variable x. Yep.
So is that 6 against that other 6, and both of them saying yes? If x is 6 is equal to 6.
Yep. Assign the value of 6 to the variable x. So that's the difference between those two. So that one might have actually been something that might be, if you didn't understand that difference, it might have been something that you could Google or refer to the book, something like that. Okay, so Go ahead.
So you were just looking for B for it to be true because I had for A I put assigns X, and then for B I put tells you X equals 6, like just written out. Like, were you looking for it to just be true? And for part B, is that what you're looking for?
No, yeah, you had to say something like A assigns the variable X the value 6, and then B is that it asks is X equal is the variable X equal to 6, something like that. Or you could just say one's an assignment operator and one is a logical operator or a conditional operator.
Okay. I mean, I have it right. I just wonder what you wanted. So for next time.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, in that case, I was not looking for true. This next question, though, it does ask you for different parts in the program. What's the value of X at the end of the program? So what I would do is type all this into a Python program like that. I don't know if these will work. I'm not sure if that. Okay. So I type all this into the program, and I actually said if a print statement was added at the end of the program, under the last line, report the value of X. What would it be? So what's the value of X right here? Well, you just type in print X. That's what you should do. So what is the value of X right there? Well, you could just run it, and you get an answer 3. So you shouldn't have got it marked wrong if you wrote 3 there. That is another reason we're going over the test, so that you can say, well, I wrote 3 and you marked me wrong. That does happen every once in a while. It shouldn't happen that often. All right, what's the value of C at the same point in the program execution? So how would we find out what the value of C is right here at this point? Right, print C. Or in interactive Python, we could just type C. But print C also works. If we were using IDLE, we would have to write print C. Okay, so we get an error. C is not defined. Why do we get an error? This is basically trying to make sure that you understand something about functions. Why do we get C is not defined?
Is it because the defined Python only has A and B and it doesn't have a C?
Where is this? Oh, up here.
Yeah, okay. Or it says find and it has A and B, it doesn't have a C, is that one?
Well, even if we said A, we're going to get the same issue. Right. Variables declared or variables created inside of a function only exist within the function. So that's the reason.
You have to put the print below the return.
Why wouldn't that work? Anybody know why if I put print C right here, why wouldn't that work? I'm still going to get my error. And even if I left this out, I don't get an error, but nothing prints. Does anybody know why that is? What about functions? What about return statements? This was kind of covered in the book. We did cover it in class. Right. The function stops executing as soon as it hits a return statement. And sometimes you can have multiple return statements, but it's going to leave these dangling code unless you have an if statement. So you say, if this happens, return this. If this happens, return that. So you can do logic in there. But anything after the return statement, if it hits a return statement, it's going to finish the function. So that's why that doesn't help.
So if you put the print before the return, it still wouldn't be anything.
It would. That's exactly right. But I was asking what the value was of C at the end of the program.
Oh, at the end, okay.
So I was testing your knowledge of functions and what functions do and variables inside of functions. And so I'm going to put a little comment here that says, you know, print the value of A at the end to find out what it is. So that's where we did print A, and then print C. I'm going to say the value of C is undefined at this point.
And the answer then is that undefined.
Yes, exactly. So at that point in the program execution, C is undefined because the function has stopped executing, and so it doesn't exist anymore. A function is like a little program. I know I've said that before. And so when that function quits executing, you don't have any of the variables that were declared inside that function. That's one reason for the return. It's because that's the only thing that gets sent back out. C comes back out here and is assigned the variable answer. So I'm going to have to comment this out for this to run, but the value of answer is printed here. Say print answer. So,
Print A.
oh yeah, print. I meant to make this print X because that was the first question. Okay, I'll even write that. Question 8. By the way, I was horrible at numbering my questions, right? It went from 1, 2 to 8. That's because I cutting some stuff out and all right, and didn't. Question 9. Question 10. All right, so the value of answer at the same point at the end of the program is 5. So you should get a 5 there. What is the data type to be? What is the data type of answer? Oh, that's not proper English there. What is the data type of answer as the program completes? How could I get that? There's a function called type. Now in interactive Python, I could just hit run and I would get that it was a float, but if I was running this in IDLE, I'd want to put this print statement here, otherwise I wouldn't see that. So now I can see it's a float. So it's a float. Why is it a float? Python isn't a strongly typed language. You don't have to like declare your variables as certain types. And because this square root function returns a floating point number, then we're going to get a floating point, even if these two values were integers, which they were. But I didn't even ask that, but I was asking there. Okay, so that's question 11. Question 11. All right, so let's move on to what is find hypon? This isn't really something that you could have figured out with code. This is again testing your knowledge of what a function is. So find hypon is a function that I created. So you say it's a function. Yeah. That's the right answer. It's a function. All right. So let's talk about the strategy on this one.
You're looking for function on 12?
Yeah, 12 is function. So if you wrote function, I marked you wrong, then
This is a lot more. Like I put this first line, but the function define called the header, and then this detail. This one here is function.
okay. Well, I'll take a look at that. So this is the first line of a function. So find hypon is actually the function. See, I'm calling the function right here. So Anyway,
So the question is, what's the question?
what's the question or what's the answer?
What's the question?
Question is, what is find hypon? And the answer is, it's a function. I mean, if you have a different.
I can understand what you're saying is simplicity in it. When you're taking the test, you look at what he's talking about, but I understand that. What you're saying makes sense. Just listening to it and see what is function, or what are you doing? I'm looking for everything. What are you talking about? Well, it is function.
Right.
I see what you're saying.
That's why I added that. What do we call it? And other things that we create in Python code using the same def syntax. So the def syntax is always defining a function.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't talk about any other way to use the def syntax besides creating a function. Anyway, I mean, I will look back. I mean, if you think that your answer is correct, I'll look back and we can change my opinion on it. Okay, yeah, I'll for sure look at it. All right, so yeah, I already copied this. Okay, so here I said, what would happen if the line with the comment was removed? So I think there was some confusion. People were like, well, if I remove the comment, nothing will happen. Okay, but I did say the line. So I meant the whole line. So this line right here, what would happen? So am I already calling this? This is a function. Am I already calling it right here? So now we're going to run it, and this is where we're starting to get into to errors. I'm going to save this to make sure that I can get it later. But I'm going to remove that line and try to run it and see what happens. Okay. So right now it's calling this this function first, and then it's going to call this function where I removed that line. Nothing's happening so far. What does the star mean here? Yeah, it's still running. Okay, still running along. Okay, you might have been at the test, running forever. Okay. If you run this in IDLE, you get a little bit better result. Pull up IDLE real quick. I think I just saved this in here. Right? Okay, we'll call this as review 1, or actually, what's the question? What number is this? 13. Test review 13. Okay. All right, so this is the line that we're going to get rid of. We're going to run it. Nothing happens. I guess one of the first things that I might do if I was tackling this question is figure out, well, what happens if I don't what happens if I don't leave that line out? Like, what happens if I leave it in? What does it do? Whoops. Control Z. So let's try running it where that is there. Yeah. Try running it. I don't know if an IDLE it might just hang because it's not going to have a problem. I mean, sorry, not interactive Python. It might just hang there forever. That happens sometimes because of what has happened. I don't get any message back. Here in IDLE, it will reset the kernel. It will reset the running, and it ran through. Okay. Did it return any result? It didn't return any result. What happens if I wanted to start seeing what happened?
Crazy didn't even return the first function. I thought it would return the first function at least. Oh, because that has C in it too, though.
Well,
Okay.
why isn't anything on the screen when I run this code?
No, print statement.
I don't have any print statements anywhere. So nothing is being reported to the user. So if you want to find out what this code is doing and you don't know what it's doing, you got to put some print statements in there. Otherwise, you're not going to understand what's going on. If you want to debug the code, then you got to find out what it's doing, right? Now, you could just read through it and try to find out what it's doing. And I believe that some of you did that. But I'm asking about a line in create range 2. So one thing that we could do to solve this problem is to kind of simplify the code. So does this ever finish running? See, this is just going forever. So we're going to have to reload this guy for this to work. So let's see if we can run this now. Yep. Or no, it didn't actually finish. Interactive Python, a little finicky, right? It still says it's a star. It's still not running. It's still just running forever. If you ever get in a situation like this, I would close Interactive Python down and then restart it. Do any of y'all have a preference as to where Jupyter Notebook opens up? Like there must be a way to tell it I want it to open up in Chrome, right? Like I don't like using it. What's that? What your default browser is. Now, if you want it in Chrome, you can just X this out, and then you copy and paste this line of code into whatever browser you want, and then it'll open up in that browser. But yeah, you're probably right. So I can just copy. This is under courses. All right. So I'll run this guy. Gotta make it bigger.
Well, it's so cool now because this thing washes out lights, and that's what makes the whole hard to see. The one's bigger than that.
There are like ways to there are like sites where you can make your browser be a different background color. You know, that would be nice. Well, this doesn't seem like it's cooperating very well in Python at all, right? In interactive Python, I'm not sure if I even do a new notebook. I think I maybe broke it. A equals 5, print, or just write A. Yeah, it's.
Yeah, it should be done in 3 seconds.
Yeah. That's really strange that it's not working. So let's keep going on this one in IDLE. Okay. All right. So in IDLE, we could try reading that through, or we could try figuring it out, right? So what does that line do? C equals C plus 1. Well, we could put a print statement inside of the loop and figure out what C equals. So what is this doing? So we could do something like print C and then try to run that. So C has gone from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's like increased in value. Okay. So what is this statement doing to C? Well, it's inside of a loop. It's taking C and it's reassigning the value of C to be the old value of C plus 1. That's why it's increasing. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's increasing by 1 every time through the loop. Now, why am I doing that? Well, I can go outside the loop one more time and see that while x is greater than c. What is that? What is this doing? Like, first of all, what is this? What is this called? Well, this is a conditional statement, but what is this part of it doing? The while. Yeah, it's a loop. Exactly. A while is a type of loop. So while is a loop. And what does the condition mean? Say this in plain English.
As long as x is greater than c, run this.
Right. As long as x is greater than c, you run this. And so I can see that c keeps increasing. What if I take this line out? Like I said, let's see how the value of c changes. Now when I run it, I just get zeros all the way down. No, nothing else. Why is c never changing now?
Because it don't have anything to
C
say
equals 0,
stop.
that's it.
It's just in a loop,
It's in the loop, but it was in a loop before.
but it
There's no plus 1 anymore, it's not gonna step up.
but it don't have a value to tell it to stop.
Well, to change.
There is no
Never
C.
gets bigger than
I mean,
x.
there's no.
Yeah, it never gets bigger than x. It stays at 0.
So is it still running or does it time out on and return?
I think ideally it eventually times out, but it may take like forever. See how it just keeps.
Is that what the star up there means? Like the very, very top of that window? The star Python 3.68?
Where's that?
On that, on the
Oh,
turn,
yes.
that's the stars, that's what those need is still running?
It's still running, yeah. So I could put this line back in, and now I can rerun it.
Oh, and then that will stop it.
That'll stop it. Yep. Okay, so the correct answer here is what? If I do this, let's look at the test here real quick. If I take that line out, what would have happened? If I take that line out, the comment was removed. So the correct answer could be C will remain the same. It will never change. Or the correct answer could be the loop will continue forever and ever. And then Y is because we never reassign the value of C inside the loop. Or the value of C is never reassigned inside the loop. Well, that finally ran. So, anyway, interactive Python is having a real issue with infinite loops. So that one was one that was easier to do without it. But this is honestly one I was thinking that you could just read through and see inside the while statement. Okay, so what is the data type of my L1 at the end of the script? How would we do that? This my L1.
So you gotta type my L1?
Yep, type my L1.
I see what you're saying. That's so simple.
And it says it's a list.
Wow.
We got it. What's the value of my L1 at the end of the script? How would I get that?
Print it.
Yep, just print it. One 149. Okay. So that's the value at the end of the script. What is the value of my L1 before the last line of code is executed? So if I wanted that, what would I do?
You have to put that. You gotta put the value before that.
Exactly. So now I'm going to run this. I get 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Before the last line of code, are the values in my L1 and my L2 the same?
I think they were not the same, right?
But how would I know if they were the
Well,
same?
you got to run both of them and look at the numbers and compare.
Right. So I just go like this.
Yeah.
All right. Are they the same? Before the last line is executed, are they the same?
Yeah, they are.
They are the same. Yep. So, you know, check question. What is that? 17. Check question. Question 14. What happened? What's it? 14 would be type. Sorry, type. You'd want to print it in case we add some other type of my L1. Okay. And then 14, 15. What's the value of L1? So that would just be this. Check question 15 or 16. The value before the last line is, so then you just go like this. This was the last line right here. So this would be 16. You could even put a little print statement. In fact, I could just change these to print statements. Right? I could put those guys like that. So 14 and 15. Yeah, well, that's because of the way it was asked. So the 17, I could even say like print my L1 equals my L2. Actually, that's probably not going to work. Okay, it does work. I didn't know for sure if it would work. So it looks like it does though. All right. So those are all the same. Okay. All right. So this everybody did really well on this part. The set of code that follows lacks comments. Write your comments down on the comment line below. So here I was just saying, something that like a lot. This line of code imports ArcPy, which allows us to access ArcGIS functions, or something like that. Okay. ArcPy.env.workspace. This assigns the value of the workspace, which is the location where all data will be referenced from. Okay, so that's what this one is. This one is this one assigns the value wells. Sorry, define wells data to the value well. So it assigns a string and sandy soil. So you could say something like, I think the best answer to this would be this references the data to this assigns values to 2 data locations or something like that. Okay. And then finally, this runs the buffer analysis tool using these inputs and this as output. All right, what's the difference? All this question's asking is what's the difference between wells in quotes and wells not in quotes? What's the difference between those two?
Wells in quotes is the string.
Right.
And the wells by itself is the value, numerical value.
No, it's not a numerical value.
A variable.
Right. So if we see this, where it just says wells and sandy, this statement right here is equivalent to, let me hit enable editing here. Oops. This statement here is the same as this statement. might be a better way to think about it. So these two statements are exactly the same. It's just that we've put the value Wells data inside of Wells. So now Wells is a variable, and inside of that variable is this value. So we've stored it inside of that value. And so these two are exactly the same. So what does that tell you about this? Well, this is saying I want to find a data set on disk that has the name Wells and Sandy. So it would run if there was a data set called Wells and a data set called Sandy on disk. It would need that, and well, buffer's the output, so it wouldn't need that on disk. Right. So that's that one. What ArcPy environmental setting? Okay, so this one right here. What's an ArcPy environmental setting? This one I was thinking, if you didn't know that, you'd go like look it up. We did talk about this in class. So if you said something like an environmental setting is a way to set up default variables for ArcPy tools, for ArcPy tools, then that would work. Or something like, what we got? Using the environment setting in Python. So each tool has a set of parameters you use to execute an operation. Some of those parameters are common among all tools, such as tolerance, output location. I don't necessarily think that these should be the two examples they gave. I think workspace and overriding outputs are probably used more often, but in any case, environmental settings are the default variables that are common across many different tools. So that's what the environment variables is. And again, this may be an example of something that you wrote down and you might feel that should be correct, and I marked it wrong. So, yeah. All right, now these next ones did test knowledge rather than, like, you couldn't have just put these into Python and figured the question out. You had to actually know what a map, reduce, and filter function were. But I did talk about having to know that. So you could go look those terms up in the book, because the book did talk about it. Let's see if we can do that. SPA. And go to, here's the syllabus. There's a link to the book. And then, where's the just HTML version? No, not the HTML version, the PDF version. PDF. And say map. Map, filter, and reduce. It's on page 93. All right. An operation like this that combines a sequence of elements into a single value is sometimes called a reduce. So you have a function that takes a bunch of values from a sequence and returns a single value. That's a reduce. That's actually what this is, right? It returns a single, it's a tuple, but it's still a single value. And so it returns a summarized value of the total. Okay. Number 21, is function 1 a reduce, map, or filter function? Oh, that was the right answer. So that's reduce. Number 22, what is the data type of the return value? Here, number 22, well, that's this right here. Okay, so here, the absolute correct answer is what? I just gave it away. Is the tuple. But I actually was nice and accepted the correct answer for either one of these, which should be an integer. So basically you got two integers back inside of a tuple. All right. What is the data type of the return value? That we did that one.
How could you tell that? Because when I like printed
Okay.
total and printed count like a million different times, like I thought I got a list, but I knew the difference between a list and a
Right. Okay. So that's a good question. Let's go back to Jupyter Notebooks. Where's that? Oh, that's back over here. And just do this in Jupyter Notebooks. Test review. Thanks. There was a bunch of questions where it wouldn't have made sense to type the code, but this is one, so I appreciate it. I don't know if this would run. I probably should test. Okay. So how would we know what to do with this list in order to find out what this data type was? We could set it equal to something. We could call it. Okay. We would have to come up with our own list. Do I have that? No. So we'd have to come up with our own list of numbers. So we could say my list is equal to, how do we create a list? We use the bracket, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now I have a little list, okay? And then I could say, how do I call a function? How do I call total list? What if I want to run this function? How do I actually do it?
total list with parentheses.
Total list with parentheses, right?
Mm-hmm.
And give it my list. Now, what happens if I want to take total lists, output this return value, and find out what it is? What do I have to do? Well, that's the that's the value. You're right. So I could print it. Okay. But can I spell it right? Let's put it outside this. Oh, you know what? I actually made an error in my code, right? So if you tried to run that, you didn't get it. You didn't get it right. See how I said? So did you actually try to run that code?
Oh, I've tried to run this a million times.
Okay, so there was an error, right? I didn't notice that error. Okay, so did you see how that had an issue there? Okay, because that just said list. Yep, and I said that I wouldn't like have code that just didn't run. Well, let's look at this. So let's run it. Let's see if we could have. So right now I get type object is not iterable. And look where it fails. It fails on number 4. Maybe not 4 weeks ago or at some point. But can anybody tell me why they think that might make sense? The error. Type object is not iterable. What does iterable mean? What does iteration mean?
Keep adding on to the loop.
Somebody say a fancy name for a loop?
Loop. Right.
I thought I heard somebody say
How
that.
many times it goes through the loop, right?
Well, it can't go through it as a loop because it's not a loop because it don't.
Yeah.
It's not listed.
Iterable is just another word for loop. I mean, iteration is another word for looping. Iteration means to do something over and over and over again. Looping is actually not the only way to do iteration, but it's the only way we cover it. The book actually talks about recursion, which is another way to do looping. Another way to do iteration. But yes. So what that's saying is that a type object is not iterable. Why does the word list show up as this weird color?
Because
Yeah, it's a special word. It's a thing. A list is actually a thing. And so what it's doing is telling you that it's a type. It's a data type. And so the reason that this makes sense is it's because it's telling you that type object, which in this case is a list, is not iterable. In other words, it's not a sequence. It's just a word that means a list. So anyway, you change that to my list. No, I messed up.
Yeah, because when it said type is not iterable, I kept looking at what I was trying to input into it. So I like tried a list, I tried a tuple, I tried putting in one word or one number, a float. And I just burned so much time on that one, and I was like, I just don't know. I'm just gonna guess.
Okay, so I'll go back because I still have everybody's test. I'll go back and adjust this question right here. What is the data type of the return value? That question, if you get it wrong, I'll adjust that. So you got it right. Okay. All right. Function 2. So what type of function is this? A reduce, map, or filter function?
Reduce.
It's a reduce function. Well, we said this was a reduce function. So let's see what this function is doing. So we'll copy that. Here I'm gonna put a little comment in here and say, oops. Line 4 was mistyped. So I threw out question 22. Okay, but to answer the question, if I hadn't mistyped it, how would you know that this is a tuple? Well, if you just look at it, you could tell it's a tuple, right? But if you wanted to find out, how would you find out that's a tuple?
Well, those parentheses around my list makes it a tuple.
No, that's not actually right. So these parentheses right here don't make it a tuple.
Well, if you have it up at the top, see, I said my list, it would make it a tuple, wouldn't it?
That's how you call a function.
That's what's going into the function is a list.
Okay, I always thought they put those parentheses out of it. You can't put tuples in a bracket, call it.
When you create a tuple, you can't put them in a bracket.
You got to put them in the like you're going in there.
Yeah. Well, actually, when you create a tuple, the parentheses aren't required.
Okay.
I've said that before. Like you can put those there, but they're not actually required. They're just to like if you want them to help you out. Usually when you use a parentheses, you're calling a function, and these are the parameters inside of a function.
Just look at the output. If the output has parentheses.
So you could do something like this and say print. This way we don't type of output. There we go. So now that's going to give us a tuple. So that was the correct answer there. Okay. All right, but I threw that out.
So all call functions is with like all of some you would put it just like.
Every function that you call has parentheses.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so we need to figure out what this is doing. So let's again feed it my list. How do I call this function? How do I call this function right here?
Okay.
No. So now I'm gonna run this. Yeah, there's the run button. I get an error by running this. I also, does this say list? It does. I screwed up there too.
Okay.
Twice. All right. So I'm gonna run this guy again. I don't know if that happened in the copy and paste because I tried running all these before I ran them. Yeah. All right. So right now I don't get a result right here.
Because you have to, well, you have to print it to view it. Right now you're just calling it. So in order to check it, you have to print it out to use the next function.
All right, that would work actually. So I'm gonna run this.
Yeah.
Okay.
We weren't really looking for an answer on this one or anything like that.
No, we weren't.
I don't think so.
No, it's just a map. Yeah.
The map function is conversion.
It is a map function because it's conversion. Okay. Why is it not necessary the function return a value? It's because it modifies the function in place there. Changes the values. All right, so what do functions, what value do functions serve in programming? This is also kind of a open-ended question. So we went over some of these in class, but they basically allow you to reuse similar logic in your code. They simplify your code, and these are all related. They allow you to label certain portions of your code, and then anything like that. So if you said something like that, and you got it wrong, come talk to me and we'll adjust that.
Don't it define the things that you're about to run? So define all the object values that you're trying to present.
It doesn't actually define. Python doesn't require you to define variables. So it's not defining.
Well, when you put DIF on there,
that's creating the function. It's a function definition.
Right. So you create, and once you create it, that's a particular value that's unique to that particular group of code that you got in there. It's only for that particular. Once you put a name on it, it's
right. It does allow you to assign a name to a group of code. Yep. That's one of the things I did say. All right. So here, want a new cell. Insert cell below. Okay. So right here, this one we can do in interactive Python. We are going to get an error. Okay, this error is actually pretty clear, right? Why is that dividing by 0? Why is there dividing by 0? What's happening in this function? Well, we're passing a value 3 and a list into the function. So x is going to be what value? The way that this is set up, x gets what value?
3.
Yep. Every time this function runs, which is just once, x inside the function equals 3. So you can think, when you see x, think 3. Okay. Now y, what's y going to equal?
It equals technically b, and then also a put into it, right?
Well, but what does y equal inside of this function? Y is what? A. Yeah, y is a, and what is a? You're right, exactly. Y is a, and a is a.
It's a bigger value than x.
It's a list.
X into 3, you're gonna come up with 0.
Well, x is always 3.
Right.
Y is a list. Okay. And so what happens here is that I have an output sequence, which is I'm just creating what right here. An empty list. Yep. So what does this do? What does a for statement do in Python? When I say for blank in blank, say it in English. Just say what it is. What's that?
Setting like certain parameters, so for this, whatever you define to basically ignore everything else, right?
Well,
When you do this, do that. So
Or whatever you define.
for every element in this sequence. Okay, that's the general way to say it. So in this case, for each element in the list y, which is 4, 7, 2, 5, 6. So the first time through the loop, what does x equal? 3. Second time through the loop, what does x equal? Because we're not changing the value of x. Now what does v equal the first time through the loop?
4.
Yep, exactly. Second time through the loop?
7.
Right. And if we wanted to find this out, we could put print statements in here. Print, here. Put it beforehand because it does fail. Print x, comma, v. So it's 3, 4, 3, 7, 3, 2. See how it's 3, 4, 3. So x is always 3. 3, 4, 3, 7, 3, 2. 3. And then it's going to append the value x divided by v. So it failed after this line ran. Why did it fail?
Because once it got to the append statement, it put it out of range.
It actually didn't. It didn't fail on the append part. It failed on this part. What am I doing right there? Yes, I'm dividing x by a number, and that number happens to be 0 this time through the loop. And so 0 is not, you can't divide anything by 0 according to the laws of math.
That's why it's through 0 because of that.
That's why division by, so the error is division by 0. In other words, you tried to divide by 0. And it even points out which line it was. It said, first of all, it failed. Remember, a function is kind of like its own little program. So the way that you read this is that in the main program, it failed right here. But then Python is more specific and says, oh, you're calling a function there. So inside the function, it failed here. Let's see what happens in here. What question number is this now?
26.
File, save as 26. Let's see if we get a similar. I think we're going to get a similar. Run it. Okay. It's not quite as descriptive there, but it does tell you the line number in the main program and then the line number in the second program. So sometimes you'll call ArcPy, let's say, and ArcPy will run, and the last error here is usually something that's totally cryptic if it's an ArcPy error, because that error happened inside of the function you tried to call in ArcPy. But sometimes ArcPy will be nice and tell you, give you an English definition. Sometimes it won't. But this line, the first line, always tells you which of your functions it failed on. It's inside the main module. And sometimes you'll have multiple failed module. In other words, ESRI's ArcPy might have called something else, and that might have called something else. So you get like 7 or 8 lines here.
So which one failed first?
It's always in order. This one's your main program. This is the second level function, and if it went into a third level function or a fourth level function, it would go down even further that way. Like I could actually do this. Give A, comma B, and say return A divided by B, and then instead of saying append that, I could just say div X comma V. So now I'm feeding X and V into this function. So now when I run it, I'm going to get 3 of these because it's going to fail. It's going to tell me it failed here, and then it's going to go into this function and tell me, oh, it failed here. In reality, this is just a silly little function that just divides something. So there's no reason for that function, but now I have, didn't define it.
So the
I called it div, not dev.
So the print statement doesn't do anything, just reveal where it failed at, even though it's showing the print statement. Actually, reveal.
Well, the print statement only will show me the result. So even if I just tried to call it, like I didn't have the print statement there, it would still give me the exact same error.
Right.
Because it's still going to try to call it. The print statements allows me to see what the result is. Okay? But see, now I have 3. So it failed in the outer. It always goes with the outer module, the main module first, and then you called this function, and then that function called this function. So it failed on line 2, line 8, and line 13. That's what it's telling you here.
If 2 would have been a correct one, all the other ones would have went through. Line 2.
If line 2. No. Well, yes. Yeah, you're right. So if I would fix this so that it wouldn't work, I can do something like this. If b is equal to 0, return -1 or something, else return a. So now if I run this, that'll solve the problem.
Yeah. And that's how you fix when you gotta run it multiple ways and look at. It's almost like taking apart the whole module and just looking at starting from that first one and work your way back to try to determine which one.
Yeah, now we made that one kind of messy with that extra function, and we put this print statement in here. But yeah, you're right. Like,
yeah, but it actually reveal where you need to work back from. Sometimes you have to work out where you get in.
right. I was just going to look at the requirements here. So it needs to run. It needs to return the same number of values, and ensure that all values returned in the result are floating point numbers. Okay. So if I run this, is that the? So let's see. So I need to put some sort of if statement in here to reassign the value of v. If v is equal to 0, and that's where I need to have. And you can put if statements all on the. I think you can. Let's see. Then v is equal to. No, maybe Python's not like that. V is equal to -1, or sorry. No.
If not, do this one. So
Yeah.
if then statement.
Yeah, something like this. There were other acceptable answers, but yeah, append -1, 0.0. Okay, so let's run this. All right, are all of these floating point numbers? Yeah, so we're good. But let's say this was 3. Let's see. Then it would still equal 1. So yeah, we're fine. All right. So you just need.
I've done it and just like changed the 0 to in the A list and just left the code the same and just changed. It wouldn't change the numbers to floating point.
Yeah, I mean, I guess technically you are correct that you could have just said, okay, well, I'm just going to change this to a different number, right?
Yeah.
But that wasn't the ideal. Did I mark?
Right.
Did I mark anybody wrong if they just changed this number?
I didn't do that.
Because technically, there's nothing wrong with that. Like it fulfills all the requirements. It runs, returns the same number of values, and ensures that all values returned.
No.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
to ensure without looking at the numbers, just the assignment of those values extra be once you cut those, they don't matter what kind of number you put in there. Like what you do. If statement in it.
Yeah. I mean,
You don't want to run into errors, so you want.
I wanted you to put this to get full credit, but I guess you don't technically need that. So if I marked you off for not having float,
I think they
sorry, not right there. Yeah, they did. I wanted you to put float somewhere like that so that it definitely returned a floating point number. But you're right. Even though this is all integers, it changed them all to float. So it looks like it does that by default. So, but that's why I had that in there. That line was to test about your ability to remember how to do type conversion. But just like that other question, doing a division will automatically force type conversion. So anyway, yeah, come talk to me if I marked you off for not having float, or just send me an email. Because I can look at your tests.
Do you have the physical test?
Do I have the physical test here?
Yeah, because when you scan, like, I have my answer on the very back of my test. It didn't get scanned in.
You didn't scan the back? I thought the copier did scan.
I did have I did have those tests in my bag, but I had them with me, but they're in my car. I meant to take them, but they're in my car, and I transferred into the van, so they're on the back seat of my. I will. I could scan in just the back of that one, or we can do it next week or whatnot. Okay.
I didn't realize it didn't scan your name. Sorry.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and then it'll be uploaded. Okay. So it sounds like lots of you have issues or things that you're going to talk to me about, and that's fine. And we can definitely adjust the grade. Everybody, it sounds like is going to get 1 point for this number 22 there. All right. Okay. All right. What time is it? 1:41 to almost 2 o'clock. We went through a lot. All right. Today, let's see. Let's just take our break right now, and then today's lab is not like writing any code, so there's not a whole lot to do in the lab. So we'll just take a break. We'll come back at 2 o'clock, and then
Dr. Ray, is this our last class?
no.
You got another one next week?
Yeah. Okay. So today is Tuesday. We have a class this day, and we also have a class this day. But this day will be test review.
For Thanksgiving break?
We don't have Tuesday off.
Are you sure? You don't?
No, I'm not sure, but I'm almost sure, positive. Do we have Tuesday
I
off?
thought we had this whole
We
week
have
off.
Monday through Friday off.
Because I remember it was different this year. Because last year it was that.
Yeah, last year we didn't.
I know it says in the little
USM.
plan they gave us.
Okay, well, if that's true, then
And so we're gonna do our review next week.
yeah. Well, there wasn't actually a whole lot of material on that day. So if we really aren't meeting that week, we're just going to do a test review, and then I was going to answer like lab questions and things like that.
Yeah. Is this the last lab we're doing?
No, there'll be a lab assignment next week, but it's going to be so. What I want to explain is that we're entering kind of like the last phase of the course, which is kind of like the inspirational, like you can do some really neat things with Python, but we're not actually gonna do all of them. But so the labs are not very intense this week or next week. So anyway, all right. So this week there's not even any code. Okay, it's just kind of to get you thinking about something that you could do. The assignment. I haven't actually typed it up, but I already know what it is. So I'm gonna type it up during the break. That's one reason why I wanted to do that, to take the break right now. Thanks. Monday through Friday. Okay, so exactly. Yeah, we'll just meet next week, and then
Surprise.
I thought I had another week, So this week, next week, and then we actually, because this is a once a week block class, the university just changed this. Are you guys in my other class? Any of you guys?
I am.
Yeah, you are. So
I was out last week, so I missed the talk about.
So they just added this. So it used to be that our GIS classes would always conflict with each other. All these once a week classes, they would always conflict, and I guess somebody ended up complaining. I know Vandana, she used to complain a lot. I shouldn't say that, but not like she used to like be a fighter for what's right and just, right? She had a chip on her shoulder. She probably still does. I really like Wanda. I mean, I never took a class from her, so I'm not going to comment on that part. But she was a strong advocate for things. So I'm just saying she could have gone. This is being recorded, so I feel like I have to say. But maybe I'll go back and edit it in case my dad ever watches it. But really, no, I liked. There are definitely good things about Wanda here. So anyway. The university just added this, and so the official exam time for this class is the last day of class for any one-day block schedule classes. And this is considered a one-day block schedule class. So we will meet on Tuesday, December 3rd. So there's no next week we'll have the review a week earlier than I thought, and then the week after that will be the final exam. Not the next week after that, because.
The 3rd.
Yeah. The next week after that, I guess, is Thanksgiving break, and you get the whole week off.
Right.
And so then we'll meet the week after that.
Was this the one we had to turn in one class program?
Yeah, you're gonna have to turn in a program. We'll talk about that.
Next week.
We'll kind of talk about it today, but then we'll get into it more next week.
Okay.
Yep. So let's go ahead and take the break. I'll type up the final. I mean, not the final. The lab for today, and then we'll do that. And so let's just meet back here at 2, and then.
That's gonna go for both classes. So they're both gonna be that week.
Yes. So the final for this class is on the 3rd, and the final for the next class is on the 4th. Yep. That's the way the university wants to do it, I guess.
I'm kind of happy though, because the way we had it set up the other time, like our exam and our trial records are due on the same day. So I'm